The wine glasses clinked like punctuation marks to a joke I wasn't part of. My father's laugh cut through the chatter, sharp and deliberate. "You can't even pay your own rent." "Ava," he said, "what have you done with your life?" My fork froze halfway to my mouth. My mother's eyes flicked toward me, then back to her plate. Her lips curved in that polite half-smile she wore whenever my father went too far, but she refused to stop him. "You're 29, she added softly, as if concern could soften cruelty. "It's time to stop chasing little projects online. If you'd married someone stable, we wouldn't have to keep explaining you." My brother Ryan laughed loud, confident, the kind of laugh that fills a room and drains everyone else's oxygen. "Come on, Mom," he said. "Maybe she'll figure it out by 40. Or 50. Lauren, his wife, pressed her manicured hand against her lips to fake modesty. "Don't be mean," she said, giggling. "Ava's creative. That counts for something." Heat rose up my neck, but I kept my smile steady. For years, I'd practiced that expression, the calm one that said you can't touch me, even as my chest ached. Dad leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine like a judge examining evidence. "Your brother takes risks," he said. "He built a company. You just play safe and stay broke." 3 years ago, he'd lost everything: his consultancy, his partners, his pride. I'd watched him sign the loan papers with shaking hands. I'd watched him pretend he still had control. Tonight, he was pretending again. "I'm not broke," I said quietly. The table went still. Ryan looked at me like I'd spoken out of turn in his courtroom. "You please, you're probably living off credit cards." My father's voice dropped, steady and cold. "Ava, don't start something you can't finish." I met his eyes. "I'm not starting anything." I let the silence stretch. The chandelier hummed above us, the faint buzz of electricity filling the space where words used to fit. Lauren glanced between us. "We're just teasing." "Ava, you know that." "Right, I know," I said. I reached for my glass, my hand steady again. "You've been teasing me for years." Ryan smirked. "And you've been proving us right for years." That one landed hard. I swallowed it like a stone. My father raised his glass in mock cheer. "To family," he said. I lifted mine slowly, the stem cool against my fingers. "To family," I echoed. My voice didn't shake, but somewhere deep inside, something shifted, quiet and final, like a lock turning in the dark. 3 years earlier, my father had sat at the same table, a stack of unpaid invoices beside his untouched dinner. His voice was quieter then, but sharper. "They pulled the contract," he said. 20 years of work gone overnight. Mom poured him another glass of wine. "You'll bounce back. Charles, you always do." He didn't. Within months, his consultancy collapsed. Clients disappeared. The mortgage on the house he bragged about at dinner tonight nearly went into default. I remembered the night he came to me unannounced, desperate, trying to hide it. "Ava," he said, "I just need a short-term favor. The bank requires a secondary guarantor, purely on paper. You won't have to pay a dime." He called it a formality. I called the loan officer the next morning and saw the numbers $200,000 still owed. Interest growing like mold. I signed anyway. Not for him, not for Mom, but because the thought of Ryan and Lauren laughing while my parents lost their home made me sick. When I told him the approval went through, he didn't look relieved, he looked offended. "You didn't have to get involved," he said. "It's my responsibility." "Then take responsibility," I told him. He left without saying thank you. The next week, he told everyone at brunch that the bank came through after all. Daniel Ruiz was the only one who knew the truth. Back then, we were both trying to build something out of nothing, me with my online platform, him starting his own small legal practice in Tacoma. "You should tell them," he said one night over takeout boxes. "They'd never believe it," I replied. "They still think I'm the kid who quit her job to play with websites." He smiled faintly. "Then let them think that. Just make sure when the truth comes out, It's on your terms. Tonight, as I sat through my family's laughter, that memory replayed like a quiet echo. My father's voice, at the time broken, pleading, was replaced by the arrogance of the man at the head of the table. He'd forgotten the debt. I hadn't. And as Ryan joked about helping me find a real job, I thought about the signature on those loan papers, the one thing holding their perfect little world together. My name. Dinner dragged on like a slow performance I had already seen too many times. Ryan poured himself another glass of wine and smirked across the table. "So, Ava," he said, "are you still doing that freelance thing? Posting quotes and pretending it's a business?" Mom chuckled, eyes fixed on her plate. "Ryan," she said gently, "don't tease your sister." Then, under her breath, "She's trying her best." Dad looked at me, unimpressed. Trying isn't the same as succeeding. I met his gaze. Depends how you measure success. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Money, stability, a plan. Those are the measures that matter. You can't float forever. Ava, you need roots. I have roots. I said, they're just not planted in your soil. The silence that followed made Lauren shift in her chair. "She's being poetic," she whispered to Ryan, who laughed too loudly. Dad's voice cut through it. "You've always had excuses. When you left your job at the agency, when you turned down that firm in Portland, I left because I wanted something of my own." I said. He nodded slowly, mocking. "And what do you have to show for it? Still renting, still single, still chasing little dreams while the rest of us build something real?" Ryan leaned back. "You know, Dad, she might surprise us one day. Maybe by 40 she'll move out of her little apartment." I felt the laugh rising in my throat but forced it back down. "You think I'm still renting?" Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You're not." I smiled, calm and deliberate. "No. But I guess you'll find out soon enough." Dad frowned. "Ava, don't be cryptic. If you've done something, say it." I looked at him, steady. "You'll see." For the first time all evening, no one spoke. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to hesitate. Ryan broke the silence with a scoff. "Sure. Another secret project." "Something like that," I said, pushing my chair back. My pulse was steady now. Every word, every insult, they were just counting down to the moment I stopped pretending. Dad set his wine glass down with a soft clink, his tone sharpening. "You're being smug. Ava, that's not a good look for someone who's done nothing." I kept my voice low. "You're sure about that?" Ryan laughed. "Oh, here we go. Another speech about potential. Go ahead. Inspire us." I leaned back, watching his grin fade when I didn't rise to the bait. "Remember that loan last year?" I asked. Dad frowned. "What about it? The one that saved this house?" He looked confused. "What are you talking about?" "The bank extended our line of credit because of my history. That's not exactly how it happened." I folded my napkin carefully, giving myself a moment before I looked up. "The bank didn't approve you because of your history. They approved you because someone vouched for you." Mom's fork paused in midair. "Ava, what are you saying?" "I'm saying the person who kept this house from foreclosure is sitting right here." Ryan laughed, too loud, too fast. "You don't kid yourself." Dad's eyes narrowed. "That's impossible. I called the loan officer myself. They needed a guarantor with consistent business revenue and collateral. That's why you got approved." He blinked. "Still processing." "You're lying." I met his gaze. "No, Dad." I signed the paperwork. "I've been paying the interest ever since." Lauren spoke up, her tone uncertain. "Wait, if that's true, then it means you've been living under my name," I said quietly. "And pretending you didn't know." The air in the room changed. It wasn't silence anymore. It was tension, thick and trembling. Mom's voice trembled. "Ava, that can't be right. Your father never." "She's bluffing," Ryan interrupted. "She probably forged something." I smiled faintly. "That's what you said when I got my first client. Remember, you said it wasn't real. Then it paid your phone bill. Dad's face reddened. Watch your tone. I said, my voice steady, for years. He pointed at me, hand shaking slightly. You think one signature makes you powerful? You think it changes who built this house? I held his stare. No, I said, but it changes who owns it. For the first time, my father didn't have an answer. His authority so loud for so long was suddenly very, very quiet. Dad's voice rose first. You expect us to believe this nonsense? His cheeks flushed a deep red as he turned toward Mom. She's just trying to humiliate us. Mom looked from him to me, torn between disbelief and something closer to fear. Ava, she said softly, what are you talking about? What did you sign? The loan papers, I replied. I was the guarantor. The house stayed because my account backed it. Ryan scoffed. Oh, come on. You don't even have a real job. You make a few dollars off that website thing and suddenly think you're a banker. Lauren reached for his arm, but he shook her off. Let her talk, she whispered. I'm not pretending. I said, you can call the bank if you want. They'll confirm whose name is tied to the mortgage. Dad pushed his chair back. That's enough. Actually, I said, my voice calm, it isn't. I opened my purse and set a small ring of silver keys on the table. They chimed against the wood, a sound sharp enough to slice through the tension. Those belong to my new house. 4 bedrooms. Lake Sammamish view, paid in full. Ryan laughed, but the sound came out brittle. Sure, Ava. Maybe in some dream. Not a dream. I said, reality. I paused, letting the quiet stretch. And speaking of reality, you might want to check your mortgage app. Dad, look at the registered owner. He frowned, pulling out his phone. I watched the color drain from his face as he scrolled. Mom leaned closer. What is it? His jaw tightened. Her name. It's her name on the deed. Ryan stood up abruptly. That's impossible, it's public record, I said. Anyone can look it up. Mom's hand covered her mouth. Ava, why didn't you tell us because you wouldn't have listened? I said quietly. You'd have called it luck, or a lie, or someone else's money. Dad slammed his palm on the table. You think this makes you better than us? No, I said. It just makes me free. The room went still. Even Ryan had nothing left to say. Mom's voice broke the silence, barely above a whisper. All this time. You let us believe. I nodded. You believed what you wanted to. That I failed. That I needed you. It was easier for you that way. Ryan's voice came sharp again. Desperate now. So what? You've been sitting there laughing at us. No, I said. I've been watching you laugh at me. There's a difference. Dad pointed at me again, his authority fraying. You wouldn't have any of this without us. I met his eyes. You're right, I said softly. Without you. I might never have learned what control looks like or how to take it back. For a long moment, no one spoke. The chandelier hummed, steady and cold. Then, Mom whispered the question none of them wanted answered. If your name is on the deed, does that mean this house belongs to you? I looked around the table, their wine glasses, their plates, the home they'd bragged about for years, and said, it always did. No one moved. The sound of the clock filled the room, each second louder than the last. Mom's eyes glistened, her voice small. We just wanted you to do better. Ava, we pushed because we cared. I turned to her. You didn't push me. You crushed me. Her lips parted, but no words came. For years, I said. I worked while you laughed. I paid while you bragged. Every time I tried to tell you something real, you told me to lower my expectations. Dad straightened, still clinging to his authority. We were trying to teach you discipline. By telling me I was worthless? I asked quietly. By making me feel like every mistake meant I didn't belong. Ryan crossed his arms. You're exaggerating. Families argue. You just took everything personally. I looked at him. You once told me no one would ever hire me because I looked too soft. I believed you. I spent a year thinking I wasn't good enough to be in the same room as people like you." His smirk faltered. Mom whispered, "Ava, please, this is exactly what it is." I interrupted. "You don't get to rewrite it now that it's inconvenient." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. You can throw your success in our faces, but you'll always be part of this family." I shook my head. "Family isn't something you weaponize." He glared at me. "Money doesn't make you better than us." "It doesn't," I said, standing. "It just makes me free from you." The words hung in the air, cold and final. I reached for my purse, the silver keys glinting under the chandelier. Mom's voice broke as I turned to leave. "Ava, wait, please." I paused, my back to them. "You called me a burden," I said softly. "But you've been sitting in my house, eating food bought with my money." I heard her breath catch. "I'm done proving myself," I said. When I walked out, no one followed. Behind me, their voices didn't rise, just the faint clatter of a glass tipping over, and the silence that finally belonged to me. The next morning, the air outside my apartment felt too still. A white envelope was taped to my door, my name printed in bold letters. I tore it open with shaking fingers. It was a legal notice, a petition filed by my own family claiming I had fraudulently transferred ownership of their house. My phone buzzed. Dad's name flashed on the screen. When I answered, his voice was calm in the way only anger can be. "You tricked us, Ava. You used some loophole to steal our home." "I didn't trick anyone," I said. "You just can't stand that I did something without you. We didn't want to do this," he continued. "But you left us no choice. You embarrassed us in our own house." I told the truth. The truth. He laughed bitterly. "You call that truth you humiliated your family for attention." Mom's voice came faintly from behind him. "Ava, please, let's talk." I closed my eyes. "You've been talking my whole life. I'm finally answering." Dad snapped. "Then prove it. Court's in 3 days." The line went dead. I stood there for a long time, the phone heavy in my hand, the paper trembling between my fingers. A petition from my parents, my brother, my family. By noon, I was sitting across from Daniel Ruiz at a small table in his office. He scanned the papers, his jaw tightening. "They're bluffing," he said. "You have all the records, every wire transfer, every contract. This won't hold. They'll lie." I said, "They always do." Daniel leaned forward. "Then let them. The difference now is that you don't have to stay quiet." His words stayed with me long after I left. That night, I gathered every document, every receipt, every file that proved what I had built. I stacked them neatly in a folder, placed it beside the silver keys, and whispered to the empty room, "You wanted a fight. Now you'll get one." The courtroom felt crowded with voices that wanted to sound righteous. My parents sat together at the plaintiff's table, Ryan beside them, a practiced sorrow on his face. Their attorney, a man with a polished tie and a polished tone, stood first. "Your Honor," he said, "this is a case of a daughter exploiting elderly parents. She manipulated trust, forged documents, and transferred title without consent." The judge nodded once. "Proceed." Mom dabbed her eyes. Dad looked straight ahead, jaw set. Ryan leaned back like a man waiting to be applauded. Their attorney lifted a stack of papers. "Exhibit a email correspondence indicating intent to seize the property." He read from the page, a clipped version of my message from years ago about securing collateral. Exhibit B, a chain of texts implying she would handle the deed. Wording consistent with coercion. Exhibit C, a printout of ledger entries that conveniently appear after the alleged transfer. The judge turned to me. "Ms. Monroe, you will have a chance to respond." "Counsel, finish your narrative." "Thank you, Your Honor. In short, Ms. Ava Monroe engineered a fraudulent transfer and now refuses to restore her parents' home." He sat. The room shifted its weight toward me. Daniel stood slowly, Your Honor, may I begin with one question to Mr. Monroe? The judge gestured, briefly. Daniel faced my father. Mr. Monroe, did your mortgage risk default 3 years ago? Dad's voice came guarded. We had a temporary cash flow issue. And did your bank require an additional guarantor for renewal? Dad hesitated. They required additional assurances. Daniel nodded. No further questions for the moment. The judge's gaze moved to me. Ms. Monroe. I stood. My voice felt steadier than my hands. Your Honor, I did not exploit my parents. I guaranteed their loan when they could not. I paid the interest for a year. I disclosed my involvement to the bank at every step. My mother's attorney rose. Objection. Narrative. Sustained, the judge said. Ms. Monroe, use your counsel. Daniel stepped forward. Your Honor, I move to admit the wire receipts from Ms. Monroe's verified business account showing monthly interest payments totaling over $20,000. I also move to admit the bank's guarantor agreement signed by Ms. Monroe and countersigned by the loan officer. The judge flipped through the copies the clerk delivered. Admitted. Ryan shifted, whispering to Dad. Daniel spoke again. Your Honor, the plaintiffs claim fraudulent transfer. We'd like to show that the title was never transferred by stealth. It was recorded properly. With acknowledgement letters. The judge raised an eyebrow. Acknowledgement letters. Daniel held up a thin folder, signed by Mr. Monroe, and witnessed. The opposing attorney sprang up. Objection. Foundation. The witness is in the room. Daniel said. Foundation is forthcoming. The judge nodded. Let us see them. The clerk handed the papers over. The judge read, This appears to be an acknowledgement of guarantor support and gratitude for saving the mortgage. Signed by Mr. Monroe. Dad's mouth opened and closed. Once. I do not recall signing that. Daniel glanced at the bench. Your Honor, may we play a short clip for authentication? The judge gestured to the bailiff. Make it quick. Daniel dimmed nothing and dramatized nothing. He simply pressed play on a tablet. A video appeared on the screen at the front. My father in a small conference room, 3 years younger, shaking my hand. His voice in the recording carried that brittle pride I knew too well. Thank you for stepping in. Ava. We will make this right. Silence spread across the room like ink. The judge looked over the rim of his glasses. Mr. Monroe, is that you in the video? Dad's answer came thin. It looks like me. Daniel returned to the plaintiff's table. Your Honor, the opposing side also submitted emails. We request leave to examine their metadata. The judge nodded. Proceed. Daniel handed a printed report to the clerk. These messages were exported 2 days ago. The sender field was edited. The timestamps matched the night before this lawsuit was filed. The opposing attorney cleared his throat. Technical reports are easily manipulated. Daniel did not raise his voice. Then let us ask Mr. Ryan Monroe why his company email appears as the origin of the edits. Ryan bolted up. That is ridiculous. Daniel held up another page. Your Honor, here is the server log. It shows an administrative login from Mr. Ryan Monroe's device at 11:37 p.m., altering the thread submitted as Exhibit A. The judge's expression cooled. Mr. Monroe Ryan swallowed. I was cleaning the thread, clarifying. Everyone does it. The judge turned to the plaintiff's counsel. Counselor, their attorney, tugged his cuff. Your Honor, this is a family dispute. Emotions run high. Daniel faced the bench again. Emotion is not evidence. Title recorded properly is evidence. Wire receipts are evidence. Acknowledgement letters and video are evidence. Server logs are evidence. He lifted one last sheet. And finally, Your Honor, the county record shows the deed lists Ms. Ava Monroe as owner of the property. There was no theft. There was rescue. Then recordation. The judge sat back, absorbing the pile of paper that outweighed every tear in the room. Anything further from the plaintiffs? My mother whispered to her attorney. My father stared at the table. Ryan stared at the door. The attorney cleared his throat. No further evidence. Your Honor, Daniel set his hands on the defense table. Palms calm. We rest. The judge took a long breath. The court finds no basis for the claim of fraudulent transfer. The deed listing Ms. Ava Monroe as owner is valid and recorded. The plaintiff's documentary submissions are impeached by their own metadata. Case dismissed. I strongly advise the plaintiffs to refrain from further harassment. His gavel came down once. A murmur rose behind us. Lauren stood, clutching her bag. Ryan swore under his breath. Mom closed her eyes. Dad did not move. Daniel turned to me. Breathe, he said. I exhaled, slow and steady, as if my lungs were learning something new. My father finally looked over, not at me, but through me. Past the reality he could not bend back into shape. I gathered the folder. Daniel gathered the exhibits. We walked down the aisle together. At the door, I heard my father's voice, thin and distant. Ava. I turned. His mouth worked around words he would not say. Daniel touched my sleeve. You do not owe them a response. I nodded. My voice came out even. I know. We stepped into the hall where the noise of ordinary life drowned out the performance we had ended. I felt the weight of paper in my hands and the lightness of something leaving my shoulders. I did not look back. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled faintly of rain and paper. Daniel walked beside me in silence until we reached the steps. You handled that like a pro, he said. I shook my head. No, I just stopped letting them control the story. He nodded once, understanding. Then he left me there, free in a way I hadn't been in years. My phone buzzed. One new message. Dad, we just wanted you to come home. For a long moment, I stared at the screen. The words blurred, the same ones he used to say when I was a kid staying out too late back when home still meant safety. Now it meant silence, control, and the memory of every time I was told I wasn't enough. I scrolled up, rereading the thread of old messages. Every one of them was a command, a lecture, a correction. Not one said, "We're proud of you." I opened the contact list, found his name Dad, and changed it to Charles Monroe. Then I deleted the message. The phone went dark, and for once, the quiet didn't feel heavy. Across the street, the courthouse windows reflected a sliver of Lake Sammamish. The water shimmered under the pale light, still and steady. I slipped the silver keys into my pocket and walked toward my car, each step lighter than the last. The trial was over. The noise was over. And so was their version of who I was. That evening, I drove past the old house. The lights were on, but the windows looked dimmer than I remembered. For a moment, I parked across the street, the hum of the engine the only sound between us. Mom stood at the kitchen sink, motionless. Dad sat in his chair, staring at nothing. Ryan paced, phone pressed to his ear, the picture of a family frozen, unfinished. Daniel's voice echoed in my mind. You do not owe them a response. I whispered to the windshield. I know. Then I started the car again. When I reached my own house, the lake stretched out behind it, calm and endless. I stepped inside, the sound of my footsteps soft against the floor. The air smelled like cedar and quiet. I set the silver keys on the counter. Home, I said under my breath, and this time it was true.